Hello? Good morning, everybody. We have a few people, or a plethora of people downstairs checking in due to the rain, so we're going to give it about 2 minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you.
You are, so I shouldn't be messing with this.
Okay, everybody, we've got about 20 people in the lobby. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to hand it over to the wonderful Cheryl DeLuca Johnson. You could just use that mic, or you can hold this one.
Okay, no, that's okay. I'll stand here. Everybody just, come in and sit down. I am so glad to be here today. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founding CEO for Street Grace. And I remember when we did our first, we used to call it Lobby Day back in 2009, and didn't know what the heck we were doing. And by we, it was myself and the lead of 2 other organizations. So we're a total of 3 of us here. And, but we had a great lobbyist who worked with us, and we had great representative who was working with us, actually senator. And we asked, what good will this do? And they said, if you can look at this, nothing changes in society that doesn't affect the legislative process, or the legislative process can influence what happens in society. And each piece of legislation that we pass is a building block. So every time that we show up here and we tell our representatives what matters to us, we put another brick in the wall. Brick in the wall of the prison that's going to house those that offend children, and building blocks to build barriers and safety nets for the children that we serve. So thank you for being here today to put a few more bricks and building blocks in that structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everyone, for making your way here on this rainy morning. We are so grateful. It's wonderful to see so many in the room that Cheryl mentioned have been in this movement for quite some time, and those who are new to the anti-trafficking movement, a few of which are here with us from their school today. So just a quick round of applause for our next generation of advocates joining us this morning. And we're meeting wonderful new friends in the space every day. Just this morning, I had the pleasure of connecting with the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores, who has been passionately advocating for our survivors in current legislation as well. And I wanted to take a quick moment to thank those that have made today possible. Our annual presenting sponsors, Choke Construction, a wonderful chairman of our board, Millard, Delta Airlines, who's joining us here today, a faithful partner from the beginning of Street Grace, Georgia Power, and the Love You Too Foundation. Your dedication to the protection of children and the work of Street Grace is consistent and steadfast, and we're truly honored to work with each and every one of you. Our program sponsors in the Life Law, House of Cherith, Beloved, Freedom Collective, and Georgia Festival of Trees. We're honored to be in your company and work alongside you. Thank you for joining us today, and as we advocate for this crucial legislation. At this time, I'd like to welcome Faith Cadona to help us open up today in prayer. Take us to church, Faith.
All right, you asked for it. Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just invite you into this place. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. And I thank you for bringing all of these people safely through the storm to be able to advocate on behalf of your children, the ones who are survivors, the ones who are still trapped, and the ones who have made it out and are here today also advocating for trafficking legislation. Father, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and thank you for this day. Amen. So I'm going to stay up here for a minute. Again, my name is Faith Cadona. I'm with Street Grace. I am a subject matter expert, and I want to introduce the wonderful Senator Sean Steele to the stage. Sean Steele was elected to the Georgia Senate in 2022. He currently serves as Georgia's 48th Senate District, which includes portions of Fulton, Forsyth, and Gwinnett counties. He also serves as the Vice Chairman of the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations and the Secretary of the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment. Additionally, he is a member of the Senate Committees on Education and Youth Transportation. Let's welcome Senator Steele.
Hey, can y'all hear me okay, or do you want me to use the mic? Are we all right? We're good? First of all, thank you for using an old picture of me. I have a lot more hair and it's a lot darker there. I'm grateful. Anytime we can talk about that. We also need to update my website. One of the only non-lawyers now on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we were at the Capitol until almost 10 o'clock last night talking about a bill that many of y'all emailed me about. We passed out, with a vote of 8-3, our tort reform bill, which included language on premises liability, which then gets into the criminal code in preserving the ability for survivors to be able to sue hotels, motels that have been complicit in the crime of trafficking. My good friend Pat McDonough is sitting in the back. He's one of the most prolific attorneys in this realm, and so just to give you all a really quick update on that. We passed the bill. It's a governor's bill. And when you have a bill that is a governor's bill, that gives it a much greater sense of importance, of weight that's being brought to it. And so the bill covered a lot of different areas. Premises liability for business owners, nuclear verdicts, medical malpractice, third-party litigation, which has to do with patents and technology rights. So there were a lot of different functions to it. Several weeks ago, Pat, Camilla, and I met about, how do we make sure that we protect the rights for survivors with that. And I think that the version that passed last night gets us almost there. Pat, I don't want to take anything away from Pat. I'll let him get into the details on it. But the way he expressed it to me is that we're almost there to the point of covering state federal statutes. So we're heading in the right direction, right? And premises liability as a collective, right? When we think about responsibility of property owners, business owners, that's what it was there for. Putting a carve out specific to survivors of human trafficking, sex trafficking, is probably one of those important things that I think that is going to come out of that bill. For me personally, and certainly representing a district that covers Fulton, Forsyth, and Gwinnett. And a lot of y'all are friends, you're from those areas, you know what I know about the areas, the parts of those towns that are so heavily engaged in this horrible crime. When I carried this bill last year, and it didn't get across the finish line, it passed unanimously out of the Senate. I met with the governor's office yesterday to see if we can do a slightly amended version to try to bring back again this year. But in the conversations that we were having around that, it didn't become a local issue. It wasn't a Georgia issue. It became really a conversation of a new national standard about legislation to protect victims and also to be able to do more on, how do we put it, really putting more screws, more tools into the bag of tricks that our prosecutors use. And one of those is kind of a concept novel to the human trafficking world called civil forfeiture. Civil forfeiture is something we use with drug traffickers, where upon conviction, their bank accounts, their properties, and everything are seized, and then that goes into a general fund to be able to distribute either for the county or for the state. What we're talking with the governor's office about is utilizing the Grace Commission coupled with Safe Harbor, and then use civil forfeiture of convicted human traffickers. And if someone is convicted of this horrible crime, then the monies that they have made by trafficking others should go into a fund that can be used exclusively for victim support. And so we're trying to come up with some really unique ways to do more and more instead of just repurposing tax dollars, but do that, and with the monies that we put in support with all the great NGO partners. We don't have the sponsor page anymore, but from Street Grace to Wellspring to Festival of Trees. I bought a tree and 2 wreaths this year so I am a supporter, right? Like I live and breathe this the way you do. I look at it from a legislative perspective and what I can do there. But one of the things that happened through all of these conversations last year was something I didn't think was going to happen, and that was attract global attention from people that are straight out of a Liam Neeson film. And I was invited to visit Romania, which is the hub of human trafficking in Europe. But the people that invited me to come to Romania were not well-intentioned people, and it was a one-way trip invitation. 78% of all the human trafficking in all of Europe spawns out of this one tiny country. And the people that wanted me to come visit and talk about this and come speak to their national legislature about what we're doing here in the U.S. were inviting me on a one-way trip to not ever return to the U.S. again. So that's the level of darkness that's on the other side of what y'all are fighting against. It's very real. It's very scary. I have 3 teenage daughters that live in Johns Creek, Georgia. And I worry every day about their safety because of stories that I learned from many of you. So I have notes. I can talk about the bill. I can talk about mechanics of that. But I thought it would be more impactful to maybe answer some questions that y'all have, maybe just clarifying, understanding. Michelle, I know you came with questions, so don't even try to pretend like you're being quiet sitting over there. But I just thought, you know, since I've kind of been on the inside of this for a couple of years now, it may help y'all to kind of understand more anecdotally, you know, what's happening than if I just am giving you one-way information. So happy to answer anything that y'all may have on this. Y'all are being way too quiet, way too shy. There's a question back. Yes? I'm sorry, could you stand up?
Yes, sir. My name is Michael, originally from North Carolina. Really glad to you got a great idea. Sometimes there's some talk about consequences. I heard you mention the civil forfeiture. Will that only be used just for the victims, meaning like the civil forfeiture will not go to any government authority to be used for, say, law enforcement tools or things like that? Will it be directly accessible, I guess, to the victims? And what would it entail? Is it going to give them housing, education, a jump-started life, you know, a decent car, something like that?
Yeah, so the question
so
is,
they don't depend
if we
on
are
us.
able to pass civil forfeiture, what does that mean? What does it do? You know, who does it help? How do we administer it, right? We never want to invite government to do what our nonprofits and organizations like yours do best. We don't want to replace that, and we certainly don't want to try to act like we're experts in it, because we're state government. We are the pinnacle of inefficiency, if we're really being honest. So what we would do, the idea, right, that we're discussing right now, is being able to use civil forfeiture, which is always going to be a variable, right? Maybe $1 million one year, maybe $20 million the next. So you don't want to build programs that are dependent on a flat line, steady stream of income, but the idea is that we would take this variable stream of money from convictions and put it into the Safe Harbor Fund, which is administered by the Grace Commission, whose board is comprised of people from all different sectors. And then they would decide and probably partition that out. My thought is probably in the form of grants to the different NGOs and be able to allow them to deliver those services best. I think that's probably the cleanest and easiest way to do it. And that doesn't cross into premises liability. It doesn't come into, you know, anything that's taken on that. What I'm thinking are the people that would be most impacted by this are the traffickers themselves, not the hotels that are enabling it. I mean the really dark places, the ones that are coordinating this, the ones that run these programs on a national perspective. And if our Attorney General's office is able to hit those convictions, yes, we're putting them in jail. But right now, they get to keep their assets. So I wanted to be able to put them in jail. We've convicted over 200 people for trafficking in the last 6 years. They've kept what they've made. I want to take everything from them. We should take everything from them and then give it to a vehicle that we already have to be able to then deploy those resources back for victim support. So I think that's kind of where we are with that. And the legislature can't be we're not the judicial arm of that, but what we want to be able to do is create a mechanism for all that to connect and work together. I knew Michelle.
Okay, we have room for one more question.
Okay, so, Cheryl, it's so good to see you. Go back a long
Nice to see you,
way. Way
Michelle.
back to when it was a misdemeanor. But Georgia has an opportunity, it seems, and Pat McDonough has done such amazing work, particularly in the hotel arena, with helping rescue the kids and help the kids get to a steady state. But with the Lake and Riley bill and the great precedent-setting casework and the things that you're doing, and the emphasis right now on finding lost kids in this country, how can Georgia, through legislation, a standard bearer for taking action to find the kids, rescue the kids, and prevent the trafficking from happening in the first place. I wanted to give you an easy one, Sean.
So, there's no easy answer to that. I can't legislate DAs to do their jobs. I can't legislate sheriffs to enforce laws that are already on the books. I think the best thing that we can do for the 3 months a year that we're here at the Capitol is to shine a light on something that needs to be talked about, that people can't be afraid to engage, and to give the tools to the people that can do it best 12 months a year, and not just rely on what we're doing here.
Yeah.
It's
Chris Carr, it's Pat McDonough, it's you working in tandem.
absolutely.
Each one of you is a piece of the pie.
We all are, and I think as long as we're all talking and we're all rowing in the same direction, that's the important thing, and that we don't have opposition. And you know, I just want to say for clarity, for anyone that has any doubt for a second, we got a lot of emails this last week, some of y'all may have authored them, encouraging members of the Senate Judiciary Committee to amend or alter or not pass the bill that passed last night. There is no one more committed to the cause of stopping human trafficking than our First Lady, Marty Kemp. She has been talking about this since day one. She has never stopped talking about this. Our governor is deeply, deeply committed to this as well. He would not have been so quick to put the amendments in the bill that we passed last night, specific to human trafficking, if he did not care as deeply as he does. He and I were texting last night how glad he was that we were able to pass that bill out with without any further amendments. If we need to do little tune-ups, we're going to do it. Pat's got some ideas on what we can do, and the governor's office will listen. But please understand, it is critically important to always remember who our champions are, and at that building across the street, they are number one, number two champions for us in this cause. So I'm going to remain, completely in lockstep with Governor Kemp and what we're doing, and always being mindful of making sure that the things that every one of you care about are the things that I care about as well, and will continue to do so. I'll end with this. Representative Sandy Donatucci's got a great little presentation she's about to give. I don't say little, but it's a great resolution. Y'all are going to visit the House chamber for that. On the Senate chamber, it's going to be a very tight, contentious, we've got a couple of one in particular, very controversial bills coming up, and there's going to be a lot of floor debate on that. As y'all want to come in, anybody that wants to come onto the Senate floor, we can kind of do it in groups of 5, and Riley, stand up and raise your hand. Riley is my amazing legislative assistant. She'll be kind of helping flow people in and out as y'all are able between the House and Senate chambers. But we are here for you. We are dedicated to help you. Many of you have my cell phone, and if you don't, get it from one of the folks that do. I am incredibly accessible year-round, and remain committed to helping any way that I can, and continue to be a voice for you here at the Gold Dome. So thank you for your time, and if you've got additional questions, just come find me on the floor. I'm happy to talk about it. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Senator Still. And thank you, everybody that is joining us virtually this morning. We have a large, wonderful audience online as well, so thank you. I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing Representative Sandy Donatucci. Thank you so much for being here. Sandy is a mom, businesswoman, military spouse, and community leader. She has called Gwinnett home for 23 years and cares deeply about our community. She ran for State House to keep this the very best place to live, work, and raise a family. Sandy previously served as a planning commissioner where she has served as a voice for citizens in zoning decisions. She's now taking her commitment to our community and a common sense approach to the State House to stand up for our families. Thank you so much.
Good morning. So I am so thankful to be here with you all. I am a freshman, so this is, to be able to start in this room is wonderful. The goal, your goal is to stop human trafficking, and just, I feel like I'm in a room of heroes. You all are wonderful. Our children are our future. I want to read this very quickly, and I am going to read it all because the information in here is, some of it's very shocking, but it just is to read it out loud for you all. So, a resolution recognizing February 11th, 2025 as Sex Trafficking Awareness Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes, whereas sex trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery wherein people profit from the control and exploitation of others and is a horrific crime perpetuated against women and children. Whereas in 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received more than 18,400 reports of possible child sex trafficking. And whereas the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimates that 1 in 6 of the more than 28,800 cases of children reported missing in 2023 were likely victims of sex trafficking. And whereas the latest numbers of the United States National Human Trafficking Hotline indicate that 10,359 situations of human trafficking were reported in a year, involving 16,554 individual victims. Whereas Georgia ranks second in number of calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline per capita, which shows that efforts to educate the public on signs of trafficking are successful and should be ongoing. And whereas the average age of entry into commercial sexual exploitation for minors served by Street Grace in Georgia is 14 years old. And whereas Street Grace has served minor sex trafficking victims for 80 counties in Georgia, whereas Street Grace has provided services in more than 5,600 exploited individuals, whereas grassroots activists will gather at the state capitol on February 11th, 2025 to raise awareness about the needs to end sex trafficking in Georgia, and whereas Street Grace has worked to organize and empower tens of thousands of grassroots activists across the state of Georgia to end sex trafficking. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the members of this body recognize February 11th, 2025 as Sex Trafficking Awareness Day at the state capitol. And we will present this later. Would love if you all can come over there after this. We have morning orders, and I would just like to recognize you. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Good morning. I have the pleasure of introducing Attorney General Chris Carr. Chris Carr has served as Georgia's Attorney General since 2006 with the mission of protecting Georgia's lives, livelihood, and liberty. Okay. He has won statewide elections 2 times in 2018 and 2022, based on his strong conservative record of prosecuting violent crime, keeping the economy open, defending Georgia's election integrity law, supporting law enforcement, going after fraud and corruption, and fighting back against federal overreach. Attorney General Carr previously served as Chief of Staff for U.S. Senate Johnny Isakson for 6 years and was a state top economic development officer for 3 years. Please help me welcome General Chris Carr.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is absolutely fantastic to have y'all here, and I cannot thank y'all enough for taking the time to be here for Advocacy Day. There's so many people I could thank. There's so many friends, folks on the Grace Commission, folks that I've worked with for 30 years, like Dave McCleary with Rotary, but Kamala, who is in the back, Kamala was my first mentor as it relates to human trafficking issues. She was in the office when I became Attorney General now over 8 years ago. And so I cannot thank her enough for laying this foundation for all that we do in our office and to make these relationships and these friendships, because this matters. And you guys taking the time to be here today, it matters. Senator Still and Representative Donatucci, and I thank them for kind of spearheading today. You're going to hear from Chuck Efstration, the Majority Leader in the House. These are all incredible partners with our governor and first lady. As Senator Still said, when governors and first ladies make issues, it matters. And that's what we have seen in Georgia. And you know, I'm often asked, people will say, well, isn't Georgia one of the capitals of human trafficking? And well, no, I don't think that's right. I mean, I think we have an issue like a lot of places around the world have an issue. But I know this, because of our governor and our first lady and our legislature and our office, I know we are leading the nation in the fight against human trafficking. That's a fact. And I'm not just saying that. That's just not empty words. I go around the country and I meet with attorneys general from both parties, and I do a lot around that I don't know anyone in the country that has put the resources behind the Attorney General's office and behind our law enforcement officers, and to train and to educate and to work from a legislative standpoint and to have a grace commission. Nobody else is doing that. And also you all, the private sector, nonprofits, what we are doing to restore those that have been involved in this horrific industry. So I thank you. And I am proud that we really have elevated our office since 2019. So let me tell you just a little bit about kind of what we've done. Now, overall in our office, we have secured 54 criminal convictions and rescued and assisted nearly 200 children. That's 200, absolutely, I'll take it. But more importantly, that's 200 lives that will forever be changed. And I'm proud to say this, and I'm going to keep saying this as long as it's true. We still can boast about our 100% conviction rating on child sex trafficking cases. Now, let me give you an example of some of the cases that we've been dealing with, because again, working with Street Grace for 8 years, you always have to talk about the demand side. So buyers, let's talk about buyers for just a minute. We have gone after anyone and everybody that's involved in the trafficking of a child, whether you're a buyer or a seller or an enabler, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But we recently secured our 12th conviction in a case that involved the trafficking of a 17-year-old female who was recovered from a hotel here in Fulton County. And think about, there you go, I'll take another round of applause. But think about that for a minute. 12 different men, buyers and sellers, involved in the trafficking of one missing child. The enablers, we convicted a hotel clerk that was part of the process. Nobody's safe. If you're going to be a part of it and you're going to benefit from it, we're going to go after you there as well. Trafficking of a disabled adult. This industry gets worse and worse and sicker by the day, but we are currently prosecuting an individual who's alleged to have trafficked an adult female with a developmental disability, the first of its kind here in the state of Georgia. Human trafficking within gangs. We've mentioned that we've expanded both our human trafficking and our gang units, and I'll mention that in a minute as well, but we've convicted multiple gang leaders and associates that are involved in trafficking both children and adults. And I want to thank all of y'all that are involved in training and education and awareness, because it matters. And whether you're training law enforcement, community folks, church groups, whatever it may be, thank you, because the awareness is out there. So now we've had a case recently. We convicted 2 individuals from Ohio, one of whom was sentenced to life in prison without parole for trafficking a missing teen throughout the metro region. And this victim was recovered following a traffic stop by local sheriff deputies in Greene and Tolliver counties in Middle Georgia. There you go. I'll take that as well. But again, it's because of the commitment of everybody in this room, our governor, our first lady, the legislature, law enforcement as well, so we're thankful. And in every case, we are focusing on the victim, the concerns and the needs of victims. We have victims advocates that work for us on these cases because they are very difficult cases. And you all know that we have to work to ensure that any victim and every survivor has the resources that they need, whether it's medical, mental health, housing, job training, education, whatever it may be. And we're here to support them as long as they need us to be. And so Hannah Palmquist is now our prosecutor. She's gotten around, obviously doing a lot in the state from the prosecution perspective, but also doing a lot of presentations and speeches. And one of the questions that she's now gotten asked more and more is, wait a minute, why have these individuals, why have these victims and survivors, why didn't they just run? Why didn't they just leave? And what Hannah has said is, you know what? We're asking that question from a place where we have a good home and a family and people that are looking for us. That's not always the case. And so that's the reason. But again, traffickers know this. They are taking advantage of the vulnerabilities of individuals, but also vulnerable populations, lower income, racially diverse, immigrant populations. It's tragic. But that's why it's important to train, and we have the signs. We all know the signs of human trafficking, so we can stop it. So what are our priorities? What are we doing looking ahead? Obviously, the legislature is meeting, and we want to continue. Ma'am, you'd ask a question about missing children. We are going to focus on missing children going forward because we know that's where the vulnerabilities are. We know we can do a lot. We've done a lot with that. We're going to continue to do it, but I think it's on the ground. We have the resources and we have the legislation that we need, always looking for other things to do, but let's put it into practice, and that's what we're going to do from our perspective. So how are we going to do more of that? We're asking the legislature, who the governor and the legislature have been so supportive of what we've done. We obviously have had our human trafficking unit based here in Atlanta. Our gang unit has been more regional in nature, so we're going to try to expand our human trafficking unit to be more regional like our gang unit because we know 80% of all human trafficking is gang affiliated. So we are asking the legislature for resources so that we can open an office in Macon and Augusta. Why is that? The interstate system. That allows us to hit 75, 16, and 20, as well as 85 here in Atlanta. And we got some resources in the amended budget that they're debating right now, and the governor put that in his budget as well, and we can't thank them enough. So we're going to focus on that. That's going to be one area. We're also expanding our gang unit into Savannah. We're currently in Atlanta, Columbus, Macon, Augusta, Albany, and an office in Southeast Georgia, but we want to have that presence in Savannah as well. And those partnerships, again, between the human trafficking unit and the gang unit make sense. So we're going to expand that footprint. So I'm going to stop because y'all have a big day. But again, let me thank you for being the brightest lights in one of the darkest spaces that I can imagine. And as I've said, you know, there are a lot of issues that I have to deal with as Attorney General in our office, but the legislature has to deal with, and they have 40 days to do it. You all are the experts in the field. You are passionate. You know what you want for our state, and the fact that you would take time to do this today means the world. God bless you. God bless our state and our great nation. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Carr. Okay, I'd like to welcome to the stage Valerie Hard, our emergency care coordinator here at Street Grace. Thank you, Valerie.
Good morning. I'll be introducing Representative Brad Thomas. Representative Brad Thomas is a husband, father, businessman, engineer, Christian, and veteran. He took office on January 11th, 2021, ready to fight to ensuring people's voices are heard and to ensure the integrity of our elections. Brad served in the U.S. Navy as an engineer. He spent several years forward deployed, serving in Europe, the Baltics, and the Persian Gulf. Representative Thomas partners in a local engineering firm. He believes family comes first with his wife, Jenny, and their 2 children on the top of his list. Otherwise, his time outside of legislative duties is spent running his business and working to design our infrastructure and manufacturing facilities. In addition, he serves on the board for Encompass Ministries, and regularly works with many of the local Christian nonprofit groups. Introducing Representative Thomas.
Y'all have to excuse me. I'm recovering. Today's my first day back, so got to make sure you get your flu shot, okay? So I jokingly like to tell everybody, my wife and I like to do karaoke from time to time. I don't know. And the thing is when you're the second person that follows a really good singer. So that's how I feel like right now. I get to follow Chris Carr and be the bad karaoke singer afterwards. So I apologize up front for the pain I'm about to cause you. So I came here today to talk about House Bill 171. Who in here is familiar with artificial intelligence? Anybody heard of it? Okay, just by a show of hands, who's actually used any form of it? ChatGPT. Okay, keep your hands up. How many have had a positive experience with ChatGPT? Okay, how many people have just a negative, raise your hand, negative outlook on? I see the majority leader back there raising his hand. So AI is one of the most incredible things that we're going to have. It is akin to the invention of the wheel. It's going to fundamentally change I'm trying to think of the right word here. Like I said, y'all bear with me on cold meds, but it's basically going to change the way that we function as a society. And it does that by this thing called Bayesian inference. And I'm not going to get into all the nerd stuff, okay, but I could totally do it with y'all if you want to talk later. But it has a way of doing searches, and it figures out how things work together. And truthfully, it's so incredible that it has the ability to, I really do think that within the next 20 years, well, number one, I think we can eradicate illiteracy, and we can do that by, AI has adaptive learning technology, so it actually learns from students. And for those of you who don't know, K through 3, if you're not reading on level at 3rd grade, it's not a good prognosis for you after that. So AI has the ability to teach kids, take those kids that are maybe struggling a little bit, learn from those children, learn how they learn, and then teach them in a way that they can digest the information, which is absolutely incredible. I get really excited about that piece. And it's going to transform transportation, the way we manage our energy grid. Pretty much every single thing in your life, it's going to affect. And it's got so much upside to it, and I get really excited about the upside, but it's also got some downsides too. And that's usually what you hear about in the news is I guess I call it the nefarious uses of artificial intelligence. One of the ones that probably concern me the most, actually doesn't probably, it absolutely does, is you train AI models. Anybody familiar with how you train AI models? Some of you, I see some people shaking their heads. Well, you do that by loading images. In this particular case, what we're going to talk about, you do it by loading images into a database, and the AI learns from those images and then can replicate those images and recreate new images. And what we found is AIs are being trained off of human faces, and these are children that they scrape off Facebook. Y'all, I'm sorry, but I don't put any pictures of my kids on Facebook. Matter of fact, if you ever see any of my campaign material, anything about me and my family, you always see the back of my kids' heads. That's to let everybody know they exist, but you're not getting a picture of their face. And what they do with this material is then they turn around and they can create child obscene material performing obscene acts, and it's AI generated. So a child isn't actually hurt because the child doesn't exist. But they use this as a mechanism to lure people to the dark web, and then that feature real children. So it's a gateway into that, and it's heinous anyway. So my bill, House bill, this is something I worked on last year. I like to thank Leader Efstration with that, by the way. He was instrumental last year in helping me push that piece of legislation. What you'll find is usually the Senate's about a year behind the House. That was the case this time. That was a joke. I'm very dry in my humor, although not totally. And all of the AI bills last year actually got held up in the Senate. They decided instead of passing them, they would take a year to do a study committee. so they can turn around to find out the stuff that we were trying to tell them last year. So you'll see a lot of the same bills that were coming through the House last year. Fortunately, I want to thank Senator Albers. He's also carrying the companion bill to this piece of legislation. It's too important to make sure this doesn't get through. To me, it doesn't matter if it has an SB or an HB or who the main sponsor of the bill is. It's about good policy. And protecting our kids has got to be our number one policy. So a little bit short today. I don't know if it's the right forum to take questions. No? Okay. In that case, I'll be happy to do it. I'll be over on the other side in the Capitol building if anybody wants to grab me on the floor. And I appreciate you having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Thomas. Okay, I'd like to welcome Matt McGee, Director of Development with House of Sheriff.
Hey. Good morning, my name is Matt. I'm with House of Cherith. I am pleased to introduce your next speaker, who is Representative Charles P. Efstration III. He represents House District 104, which includes Auburn, Carl, and Hamilton Mill areas of Barrow and Gwinnett counties. A former assistant district attorney and chairman of his county Republican Party, Chuck Efstration was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives on December 13, 2013, and was elected majority leader by his Republican colleagues in November of 2022. Prior to being elected majority leader, Chuck served as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee and as an administration floor leader for Governor Nathan Deal. During his time in the state House, Chuck has earned a reputation for steadfastly advancing conservative values and always standing up for the voiceless. In addition to legislation cracking down on criminal gangs, Chuck also sponsored legislation to combat hate crimes in the aftermath of the tragic Ahmaud Arbery murder. As an assistant district attorney, Efstration conducted jury trials prosecuting offenses including murder, rape, armed robbery, child molestation, drug possession and sale, domestic violence, computer crimes, DUI, and theft. Chuck also served as a prosecutor for juvenile court and the Gwinnett County Drug Court Program. Would you please join me in welcoming Representative Chuck Efstration.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Matt. It's such an honor to be back with you all. I think I've been here every year for the past maybe 8 years that this Advocacy Day has happened. Seeing the blue scarves over at the Capitol means so much to all of us. We just heard from Chairman Brad Thomas, a champion who is fighting, a champion in the front lines to protect our kids and fighting traffickers in a new form, right, through these technology advancements. You know, when I initially got involved in this issue, State Senator Renee Unterman years ago had Rachel's Law, right? It was a constitutional amendment to fund necessary expenses for survivors' expenses and rehabilitation. And that legislation, years later, I think it's at least 8-9 years later, it was just affirmed by the Georgia Supreme Court. Since I saw you last, there was a challenge as to the constitutionality of fees assessed on adult entertainment and to fund trafficking victims' survivors' needs. And so that's big news for us because we had a constitutional amendment. It was Vote Amendment 2 years ago. I think that was 2014 or 2016, something like that. And so that's terrific that's come through. This legislative session, we've got very important legislation that we have under consideration. We want to preserve the ability to go after the, you know, human trafficking is the modern day form of slavery. Could be sex trafficking, it could be for labor servitude. But what we have to do is address this problem with both aspects, both the supply and the demand. We have to go against those who are making these victims available, and then also we have to work on addressing the demand industry that we see out there for exploitation of human beings. And I think with a comprehensive approach like we've had over the past few years, continued effort through organizations like Street Grace, we are going to continue to be the #1 state in the country for fighting human trafficking. Other legislators and advocates come to Georgia from other states to see what we've done. From being one of the worst hotspots in the country and the world, Due in part to, we are a very international city. We have the busiest airport in the world. But because of these factors, we have had to put laws in place to aggressively go after this problem. And we have seen that, we've seen great benefits because of that. But I want to just say all this. You know, legislators talking about this over at the Capitol, that doesn't persuade often. That doesn't actually see these issues through to passage or get funding as needed. Your advocacy, you come in here to the Capitol to talk to your legislators, to impress upon them the importance of taking this issue seriously and being aggressive in our advocacy, is how we get that done. So I want to commend all of you for taking time to be here today. I want to encourage you to keep up your hard work, keep working with great organizations like Street Grace, so that we can continue to be the best state for fighting human trafficking, for putting these evil criminal enterprises behind bars, shutting down their funding sources, stopping the demand, so that we can continue to make Georgia safe for particularly young girls and boys, but victims of all ages. So again, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day across the street meeting with your legislators. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, wonderful. Let's welcome Jess Roth, Atlanta Director of Freedom Collective. Thank you, Jess.
Hi, I have the privilege of introducing Special Agent in Charge Anita Ivy. She has been employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation for over 20 years. SAC Ivy is currently the SAC of the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit. She was first promoted to SAC of the Major Theft Unit. Prior to that, she was appointed as the commander of the Harrelson-Paulding Drug Task Force. During her time with the GBI, SAC Ivy has assisted with various high-profile investigations and events like the G8 Summit, Super Bowl 52, and the Atlanta Public School CRCT investigation. She is a firearms instructor, master resilience instructor, and an advanced law enforcement rapid response to terrorism instructor for the Bureau. SAC Ivy has dedicated her life to helping others. She remains focused on higher education and currently holds an associate's degree in the business administration, a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's degree in criminal justice, and a second master's degree in public safety administration. SAC Ivy is a graduate of the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy. She is a member of the International Association of Chief of Police, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Georgia Association of Women in Public Safety, and the FBI National Academy Association. Please help me in welcoming SAC Anita Ivy.
Wow, you guys found a lot of information about me. Thank you, guys. You guys heard quite a bit already about what everyone's doing as it relates to human trafficking. Just want to share with you guys a little bit about what GBI is currently doing to address this huge issue. One of the main things that we've done was, of course, the creation of our unit, the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit. And in law enforcement, you always know that we like to have acronyms, right? So our acronym for this unit is the HEAT unit, which was established in July of 2020. What our unit focuses on, of course, is human exploitation as well as labor trafficking. January, of course, most of you guys are already aware of, was Human Trafficking Prevention Awareness Month. And in doing so, GBI, as far as Attorney General Chris Carr, got together to get the Human Trafficking Training Center to come down to Columbus, Georgia, and provide crucial training to about 100 students there. So that's one of the big things that we're focused on is training. We prefer to train law enforcement because those are our first responders. Those are the ones that's gonna have that first interaction with a lot of our victims. We like to train hospitals, whether it's doctors, nurses, or administrators. We also get out and train at schools, your local high schools, sometimes our juniors as well as teachers, counselors, and staff. The GBI is focused on not only investigating this horrible crime, as you've already heard, modern-day slavery, but we're also involved in getting out ahead of it. We prefer to be more proactive. Therefore, we have several human trafficking operational goals, which is one, to identify the victim, of course, to offer some services, resources, which we usually go through our CJCC or our advocates. We identify traffickers, and we work towards prosecution of those traffickers. In conducting some of these proactive operations, what is typically our demand reduction operations, we typically go to hotel motels. We also get involved with our illicit massage businesses, which we call the IMBs, truck stops, as well as bus and train stations. Now, I mentioned our IMBs, which is illicit massage businesses. There are approximately 19,000 of those in America. Let me say that again. There are approximately 19,000 here in America. And that is the fastest growing outfit we have in America. This is an Asian organized crime. In the last 3 years, there's been a 32% increase. To put that in perspective, there are more IMBs in California and New York than there are Starbucks and McDonald's. Let that sink in. Yeah. So there's been a 46% increase in the past 8 years. So another thing that we've been really doing is we can't do it all. My particular unit, we have a special agent in charge. We have an assistant special agent in charge. We have 7 agents, an office manager, a criminal intel analyst, and a special prosecutor. Out of the 7 agents, we have 3 that work primarily agriculture labor and labor trafficking. So, and that's for the entire state. The other 4 works commercial sex trafficking for whether it's adult or minors, as well as labor trafficking. So we can't do it all. We need everyone involved. Therefore, last year we put together a request to be able to get task force officers to join our fight against this trafficking. We also like to get within the different local and state agencies and get affiliates so that we can tap into some of their resources. And we've been pretty successful so far. We're still gathering, task force officers, but the affiliates are out there. So they've been joining us in this fight. Some of our stats, because I know you guys like stats, for the human trafficking unit include, since inception, we have opened over 515 human trafficking cases. We've convicted 9 traffickers, and we've recovered 110 victims. This fiscal year alone, the unit has reported 40 arrests, 11 indictments, which basically reinforced our commitment to justice and victim recovery. And we've opened a total of 75 cases. So, that's a lot for this fiscal year, and it's growing. So our message is very clear. The GBI message is clear as it relates to human trafficking and to buyers in our state. We will thoroughly investigate, we will arrest, we will follow through prosecution, anyone or individuals who sell or buy human victims in the state of Georgia. GBI remains steadfast in the fight against this modern-day slavery with a clear mission to eliminate human trafficking and ensure that traffickers no longer operate in the state of Georgia. That's it. That's what I have for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now I have the pleasure of introducing Desiree Saez, a wonderful street grace care coordinator.
Good morning. I will be introducing Patrick J. McDonough. Patrick J. McDonough leads the Anti-Sex Trafficking Division for Anderson, Tate, and Carr. He has helped countless survivors to recover civil damages against complicit hotels. He was the lead attorney in the first case in the country to go to trial against the national hotel brand. Before joining Anderson, Tate, and Carr, Pat was a district attorney in the Cordell Judicial Circuit. leading a multifaceted team that created child advocacy centers to help victims of sexual abuse. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Patrick J. McDonough.
Good morning. I've got a little PowerPoint slide that I want to go over with everybody and kind of give an update on it. But just, I've been doing this for 6 years. I actually see a lot of new faces. You know, normally I get here and I tell people what I do and everybody's kind of nodding their head. But what we do as civil lawyers, as you heard from the GBI, you know, they can't do it alone. It really takes a village. It takes street grace, it takes a legislature, it takes a GBI, it takes an attorney general. Our little piece is this. If you're a survivor and you have been sold at a business and that business made money and they knew about it or should have known about it, we can sue you and we can recover damages for you. All right? And I want to give you a little recap of what we've done, and we've had some great success. But one thing I want to make clear is that Georgia, clearly you can tell by today, is at the forefront of attacking human trafficking. And these civil laws were passed in 2008 in federal court. So we've been in federal court for a long time. But Georgia's a leader in 2021, passed a law and said that we can allow sex trafficking survivors to sue here in Georgia and to do that. Currently, and I want y'all, if you forget everything, please remember this. One sentence for survivors is what I'm going to ask everyone to remember, and we're going to hand this one sentence out when you leave. There is a massive push for tort reform right now by the governor's office and the legislature, and I'm not taking a position on tort reform. There are pros and cons to tort reform, but as tort reform is presently being passed, it would eliminate a survivor's chance to ever bring a cause of action in Georgia. It would eliminate it. Now, this organization and other organizations rushed and sent emails out to the legislature, and I was with Sean last night till 10 o'clock as well when they passed this bill. And they did pass a carve-out. And so your voice was heard, and the legislature changed things. Unfortunately, the carve-out, it's just not sufficient. Candidly, if the law got passed as it is right now, a survivor would not have an opportunity. In fact, if a lawyer tried to sue in Georgia, they could be sued for malpractice. You would have to take your case to federal court. It's not much. All we need is one sentence. If you want survivors to have this ability to come after the hotels, we need you to tell your legislatures, we need you to tell the governor, we need to tell everybody. One sentence for survivors. That's it. And then we are at the forefront. If they do not do that, or someone places spin on you and tells you, oh, there's already a carve-out for survivors, I can tell you, for someone who's done this for 6 years, filed the first case in Georgia, have helped 75 survivors, we will never file in Georgia. The survivor will never file in Georgia. This is not close. It takes one sentence, and they're protected. So we're going to hand this out to people as they leave the doors, and I hope you bring that to your legislatures. All right, I'm a little tricky. You got a PowerPoint? Can we start that? I'm also going to come out here because I don't have the computer. All right, so you go to the next slide. I want to tell everybody, oh, fantastic. I want to tell everybody just a little bit about this real impact. When a survivor comes to see us, everyone always says, you know, is this going to be re-traumatizing? And yes, but what they have done is they have taken back their own power. And we've made impact. Now, sometimes they get the recovery, and it's not a huge recovery. It's enough to get out of poverty. It's enough to get a hotel. It's enough to get good mental health treatment. Sometimes it's a much better recovery. We have a number of people who have their first house. We have kids that have college funds. We have people that have literally altered their life because they took their power back. Next slide. Also, the second big thing it does, one of these things tort reform talks about, I'll just back on my tort reform thing, is these businesses that get unfairly sued and, you know, somebody comes by and shoots someone and they don't know they can do that. That is not what this is, right? We are going after hotels that have a pattern of horrific conduct. And in the past year, 5 of these hotels were shut down. Not all because of our lawsuits, had a lot to do with local law enforcement too, but a lot of it had to do with that. And you'll hear in tort reform, oh, I can't get insured. We had a hotel that was so bad, they used to send a code out and tell people, hey, 12-12, that means the police were coming. So get all the girls in the room so you can't be seen. Well, we sued them, we recovered, they weren't reinsured, they were shut down. Those people, we want them out of our community, right? Out of our community. And again, when you talk about tort reform, it's not just for the survivor. Local businesses, good businesses don't want these places. These are magnets for crime. These make the GBI's job much worse. So we're starting to really do things. We're turning that corner. I came here 6 years ago and I was like, hey, I have this idea. You know, now we're actually getting something accomplished and we've had some deterrence. Okay, you can go next slide. So again, the threat of tort reform, one sentence and we're good. If they don't do it, I will tell you, it would be malpractice for a lawyer to bring a suit in Georgia. Every case will go to federal court, and their recoveries will be limited. Okay, you can get the next slide. Again, the basic law now is that if a business is profiting from this, they're making money, and they knew or should have known, then they can be held accountable. That's essentially what it is. Okay, next slide. The Red Roof trial was kind of a landmark trial because there's all these cases throughout the country, but never has there ever been a trial that has actually taken a brand to trial. We were in trial for 3 weeks. We had 11 survivors. They all testified, and right before we went out to the jury, they decided to settle the case. I will tell you this. The first question anyone ever asked me about if I wanted to do a civil case if you're a survivor, will it be re-traumatizing? Yes, it will be re-traumatizing because you have to talk about what happened. But is it worth it? Here's what I will tell you. 95%, maybe 98% settle before you get to trial. This one went to trial, and every survivor testified. After they testified, to a one they told me, if I didn't win a penny, I've taken back my life. I've helped that next survivor. And they did it for them. These are powerful, powerful people. It was a very powerful thing, and it sent a very clear message to the business community. You can't just fake it and say, oh, I don't see anything, because I will tell you, 2-1, I've deposed, 50 hotel owners, every single one of them. I've never seen anything. I don't know anything, right? So again, you can go next slide. Big case. Yeah, and again, this is just an example. When we talk about businesses, you're going to hear in tort reform, oh, these poor businesses that get by these frivolous lawsuits. These are not frivolous lawsuits. I've either filed or I'm co-counsel or I know everybody who's ever filed one in the state of Georgia. This is just one example. This is what the front desk guy said. He was making $12 an hour, said he was doing what his boss told him to do. Never a minute, never a year. I didn't see prostitution, pimps, violence, 8 to 10 pimps, 15 girls, gangs daily. Saw girls getting choked. Women drug into the room, punching girls like they were grown men, said they controlled their whole lives. This is the kind of place, this is going on for years. Okay, next slide. I wanted, just because sometimes when someone tells you, it doesn't give you the same effect. So I just want you to hear a little bit. This is under oath testimony of a front desk person at Red Roof Inn. If you can click.
And it didn't take a rocket scientist. You know when somebody's prostituting. It's common sense. I've been working in hotels now for almost 20 years.
Next one, to the right.
Any question in your mind, based on your experience and your observations, that there were basically children being sold for sex out of that hotel?
They were young.
Any question in your mind that there were pimps involved with these children that were being sold for sex?
No, sir.
Okay. Any question in your mind that your managers or Mr. Moore knew that was going on?
They knew.
That's front desk. They knew. That was the vice president he was talking about who knew. You can go to the next slide. This was a security person who said she had the power of the pen, that she was hired to be a security guard. She couldn't do anything other than report it to Red Roof. So this is how she described it.
It was no way you couldn't know. It was just that obvious. It was no way you could not know. They just didn't care. It was like going to hell. I called it the hotel hell.
You go next.
Jay devised a plan to where he was like, well, what we'll basically do, because, you know, they're paying, so we can't just turn them away and say, you can't be here. So what we did was some of the questionable guests, or some of the ones that I guess you would say had riffraff, we put them on the back side of the building.
Oh, and our local hero, Michelle Sarkeesian, sitting here in the second row. Here's the thing. The reason we were able to get to the top, you hear this, see something, say something? Michelle got information of what was going on at this hotel. She used her contacts, and she contacted the president and CEO of Red Roof. And she didn't just tell them what was going on. She followed up with email after email after email. She was our star witness. She got on the stand and she let them know. They knew about it, and they didn't do anything about it. We're talking about the highest echelon of a national brand. If you see something, say something. And she literally was the star of the show. She's also like published with Cornell and had this article, and I keep telling her, we're not going to be able to get any of that into evidence. And then they asked her about it. We got to talk about the whole thing. It was brilliant. Had to be there. But again, people like you make a difference. Okay. This is just one other example, and I'll wrap up, but I want, again, to bring it back to tort reform. I could not bring that Red Roof case under this tort reform in Georgia. I couldn't bring this case. This is a little girl, I think she was 15, 16 years old, got sold at a hotel. She was beaten by the trafficker. He took her clothes, took her money. She had to wrap herself in a blanket, run down the front desk, and ask for help, and they laughed at her. And she had enough sense to pull the fire alarm. She was rescued. The state did what they did. They brought the GBI in and the local law enforcement. They found the tracker, tracked him down. He got convicted. But the hotel was kind of off. Hotel said never saw anything. Never saw anything in the world. Now, ultimately, this led to a very good settlement, and she was able to change her life completely. But again, under the tort reform, we would never bring this case in Georgia. We would never have an opportunity. This was a negligence case in Georgia that's going to be taken away if we don't get our one sentence exclusion. Okay. Yeah, again, the owner said he'd never seen it. He'd been living there, never seen anything. He lived there for 20 years. Next slide. One of the other things, if we don't get our exclusion for tort reform out, is it basically says they're trying to protect certain business owners to say, hey, I've had this one unique incident happen to me, and there's other problems around here. So there's part of it that basically says, you can't be liable unless you're worse than your neighbor. And what that ultimately would do is these areas that are really bad, the Fulton Industrials, the Delk Roads, these areas, you could all just get together and say, hey, let's just have no security. Let's not do anything. And then you're covered. Like you have no liability, right? So it would actually create pockets of crime. Again, I'm not saying there's not good things for tort reform. There are very valid, legitimate things that the governor's got for tort reform. All I'm saying is we need our one sentence exclusion so it doesn't affect survivors. And again, this is the one sentence exclusion. So again, I a lot of times like to talk more about what we do in the litigation world, but this is a big deal. The tort reform is passing. There's absolutely no question about it. It is the governor's #1 project. As I said, pros and cons, taking no position on that. But for survivors, unless we get this sentence, all the work we've done to try to protect survivors, at least in this area, would end. So I ask for all your help, and we'll hand those out when we leave today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pat. Okay, I'm going to welcome Kamala Zulfagari, our Vice President of Government Affairs. Most of you know her. She began her law career as Assistant District Attorney in Georgia, and she led the creation of the Fulton County Human Trafficking Unit, investigating and prosecuting human trafficking cases in collaboration with agencies like the FBI and ICE. She served as the Chief Human Trafficking Prosecutor at the Georgia Attorney General's office, where she drafted and successfully advanced human trafficking legislation and worked across public and private sector to strengthen statewide anti-trafficking efforts.
All right. Thank you so much for being here on this rainy day. Let me just start with our speakers really are the champions. So I'm going to talk about what some of the legislative policies we want to advance are, how you can make that happen. But I would take your list of these people and do try to either stop by their office or send them an email thanking them for their work. Very briefly, how an idea becomes law. First, it has to be drafted. First, it has to be filed. We're doing Advocacy Day about 2 weeks earlier, maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier than some years, because we kept bumping up against crossover day. It was extra crazy. This year it's the rain. So we do still have some things that are in that drafting stage. But then if it's drafted by a House member, it gets assigned to a House committee or a Senate committee. You've heard a lot about the tort reform bill, which was in the Senate committee last night. You could see it online. Said it was going to be at 4. So many of you sent out those emails. Your voice really was heard. We were getting phone calls saying, wait, why are all these people emailing us? Until about 10 o'clock last night. So don't think those emails did not move the needle. And as always, there's more work to be done. That committee was hearing. Next, or that committee had, next it goes to Rules Committee where it's scheduled. We'll figure out when it goes on the floor. Again, this legislation, because it's the governor's bill, will go through. Sometimes when we're reaching out, we're saying, hey, it got through committee, everybody's excited about it, but we can't get it scheduled for a vote on the floor. Please contact Rules Committee. Then it goes to the floor, then it goes over to the House. Again, bill's gonna have to be heard in the House Committee, scheduled, heard on the floor. They have to match, so sometimes it goes back and forth a little bit if the second chamber made some modifications, and then finally it's signed into law. So we're in different places with all these bills. We're waiting now for a House committee meeting for Representative Thomas's bill, the one that has to do with AI. And some of you know we actually are using AI with law enforcement to fight trafficking. But we know how very strongly this legislation is needed so that law enforcement can continue to fight, and that AI isn't an excuse or a loophole. And actually, a lot of the ideas and recognition that AI was going to be needed was from the agents that work these CSAM, child sexual abuse material cases, at the GBI. All of the ideas for that, the first people saying, hey guys, this is going to be a problem, were actually those agents that work these cases. All right, next. So some of the how to advocate. We have provided a letter. If you've got a bag, if you go ahead and pull out your letter, I think that'll be really helpful and also help me do this faster. Find your representative. I'll give you a QR code in just a second. Put your representative, you've got 3. One for an extra one for your representative, one for your senator. When you go to Open States and find your state rep, you will find out where their office is. If it says CAP, they're in the Capitol. That building will be going for pictures immediately after this. If it says CLOB, Coverdell Legislative Office Building, it's right there in the corner. Go to their office, hand it to them, put your address on the bottom, because anyone who shows up and talks to anyone, it's huge, because, well, 1 in 10,000 of their constituents actually come down here, so you're speaking for 10,000 people. If you're their constituent, it is even more important. Educate them on the importance, but be very respectful of their knowledge and insights. A lot of these people have been in this fight a long time. Make it short, practice, and then if you can get a card and send a follow-up and thank you for hearing from them, get a card from their office. I'm gonna leave this on. All right, pull out your phones. If you know how to get a QR code, this will take you straight to Open States, find your legislator. If you don't know who your legislators are or need to find out, they all moved offices. They move offices at least every other year, but usually once a year. Only a few of them get to keep the space, so find out where they are now. And then, if not, Google Open States, because I want to go on to the next slide and kind of talk about these. Okay, this is one of the things that Senator Still talked about that he introduced last year. I think we understand how important the hotel industry can be. And for a huge extent, they have been wonderful friends of the fight against trafficking. So back in the day, I appreciate everyone saying how long I've been here. But back in the day, when I was at Fulton County's huge, you know, Alpharetta to way far south. There was a point of time when half of my cases came from one hotel in Hapeville. Not all of you have even heard of Hapeville. That's right around the airport. It wasn't because most of the trafficking happened there. It was because Hapeville PD was trained and hotel clerk was trained. And she would call when she saw things. As a matter of fact, when I was at the AG's office, we had a case where there were 3 girls had been trafficked by this one guy. They were 13, 14, and 15. They had been trafficked for weeks in other hotels one of which had told them, hey, hide. One said, hey, you're too much trouble. Knew they were at least listed as missing, knew what they were doing, said, we know what you're doing, but didn't contact law enforcement till they ended up at a place where the hotel person had been trained. They were all recovered and those traffickers were prosecuted. So thank your hotel association for their part in this, and then educate them as to what more is needed. That's going to be really key and crucial. Oh, by the way, I did have to say, all of our statistics are evidence-based, and if you are a person that wants to know where did that study come from, you go see Courtney. She wanted to stick them on slides, but I told her we didn't have time. Okay, next one. Okay, this is when Senator Thomas spoke about. I think he spoke about it very clearly. So we do want to make sure Senator Albers should also come out. He was not able because of caucus meeting happening today, but he's going to come out for pictures. They have mirror bills, and that's going to be very, very important to protecting our children from exploitation. Next. Okay, this is something those of you who have been around have seen for a while. We have to make sure that the demand that fuels trafficking is punished as that fuel for trafficking. There are now multiple states that have made it a felony. Texas recently, North Carolina recently, I believe Florida as well. It has gotten so far every year. It has gotten through one side of the House or Senate, through the other, and then died on the floor. There is some powers at work that keep it from getting passed. However, we aren't going to stop the fight for it until it does get passed. Courtney? Safe crime reporting. Okay, I think this is really key and not everyone sees this. We want those who are being sold, adults who are being sold, to be able to report crimes of violence. 95% of them report experiencing violence from their buyers, from their sellers, and others. They also often are the ones that report when a child is being trafficked and bought and sold. And we want to make sure that if they come forward to report a violent crime, that they can't then, in their story, they say that they have committed an act of prostitution, that those words that they say can't be used against them. This is for two reasons. One, very practical. There are still areas where law enforcement really hasn't been trained, where we have seen these women come forward, report trafficking, and then still prosecuted for that misdemeanor prostitution. But the most important thing, I think, is we want them to feel safe talking to law enforcement, talking to other survivor groups, to getting services on their way out of the life. And so I think this is a really key thing that we need to have here. All right, next. I think I'm talking to you. Courtney? Sorry, next. Okay, survivor window of opportunity. Okay, so there's a lot about tort reform. What other thing that we have done for child abuse in the past that we do want to do for Pat's doing all these brand new cases. Survivors are coming forward. One of them is a case we prosecuted back in the day in Fulton, who's just outside that 10-year statute of limitations. They really didn't realize it was a possibility to bring a case against those who were knowingly financially benefiting. So we do want to have this carve out in there, give them an extra window where they can pursue justice now that they know this is something that they can do. Next. All right, budget. A.G. Carr talked about this. I think this is great. If you want to put a big heart or a thank you, Carr, thank you, Governor Kemp, by this piece, the governor announced in his State of the State address, of course, my favorite part is that they were going to be further funding the Attorney General's Human Trafficking Unit. They want to open offices in both Augusta and Macon. So we want to encourage that. We need that money to stay in the budget. Let me just tell you, the Attorney General's numbers are outstanding. The GBI's numbers are outstanding. The number of cases that are now being investigated, charged, these are hard cases. The reason they're a specialized unit is these are hard cases to bring. There is no place that is investigating the number of cases that GBI and the Attorney General's office are. So we do want to keep encouraging them to keep that funding in the budget, because it's making a huge difference in the number of children and adults recovered and in the number of traffickers in prison. And then finally, this is just, Pat has talked about the last part. I might even want to write, thanks for yesterday's update, we still want more. Whatever you want to say, you have been educated now. We are so fortunate to be here. We're so fortunate to have this governor and this first lady who have so shined a light on this, and to have representatives and senators and the attorney general. I was just on a call with some of our national counterparts, still saying, you know, wow, so much is still happening here and so much has been done, and they want to mirror that. And a lot of that has to do with you guys not just emailing, that's huge, but actually showing up here today. Okay, so I'm going to give some final instructions. You can personalize this letter, you can use it, you can say, this one I'm not sure of. This is your letter, or you can just sign it, give your address. It really is important that they're hearing from you. What we're going to do now, there's a couple things going on. So you heard Senator Still said if you want to go into the Senate side, I can get you in touch with this person, Riley, who will arrange that. We're also going to work on the, but if we can do first is go to the Capitol Rotunda. There's so much going over there. We've actually decided, and I would love if I could see the photographer. Oh, photographer, yes, okay. So what we're going to actually end up doing in the picture is go to the Rotunda. You may have seen these pictures before. You'll go in the doors here on this side of the Capitol, go in, have your ID, go up one set of stairs to the then you'll be on the second floor, the middle of the Rotunda, and the photographer will be on the third floor looking down and getting our picture from there. We're about to text all of the senators and representatives that have asked us, so they're going to come out for that picture. I know we like to sit around and talk here, but if we can move there fairly efficiently and then be in the Capitol with your purple scarves, talk there, and go on. Thank you so much. This has been on Facebook Live. If you need to share it with anyone, it'll be on our page. Have a great day.